Good evening, President Csba.
Good evening. My technology is giving me some hard time. So I'm just using my phone right now. My iPad is also not acting right.
Do you
So-
need me to have Frank give you a call? Do you need assistance, or what would you like?
Let's see if it opens.
Okay.
No, for some reason, my screen is frozen on my iPad, which I use for the video camera purposes. So
Sure.
well,
you look great right now.
yeah, I'm on my phone, but which is fine. For now,
Okay.
I think, yeah. So let's start the meeting anyway. Okay. This is 5:01. I would like to call to order the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 18, 2021. This meeting will be conducted completely online. Executive Order number N-29-20 supersedes the prior instructions and prohibits a gathering space even if social distancing guidelines are followed. To participate in this online meeting, please see the link on our website. Live streaming on YouTube will begin at approximately 6 p.m. and we reconvene to open session. The URL for YouTube live streaming may be found on New Haven Unified School District's webpage just before the meeting reconvenes to open session. Are there any speakers for closed session items?
There are no speakers.
There being no speakers for closed session, the board will now leave open session and go to the closed session. Thank you. Hello, Lori.
Good evening, President Csba.
Good evening. I am having some difficulties, so I cannot see all of the participants. The board members, are they in the meeting already?
Not
Can
yet.
we start? Not
We are
yet?
missing, we're missing 2. No. Yes, we're missing 2.
Okay.
Oh, now we're missing 1. Everybody's in. Miss Csba, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. The board will now convene open session and report out from closed session. The Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, May 18, 2021 will be conducted completely online. Executive Order N-29-20 supersedes prior instructions and prohibits a gathering space, even if social distancing guidelines are followed. Live streaming on YouTube will begin now for the open session of the Board of Education meeting. The URL for YouTube live streaming may be found on New Haven Unified School District Board of Education webpage just before. So if you would like to provide public comment for this meeting, you may do so by utilizing the raise your hand option in Zoom. Or if you are calling in by phone, please press *9 and wait to be called on. We have one community member comment ahead of this meeting via our public comment at New Haven Unified School District .k12.ca.us email address. That comment had been provided to the board prior to the start of this meeting. Additionally, we want to remind the public that board will not be responding to the questions posed by those making public comments this evening. Relative to the closed session item number 3.1 through 3.5, there was no action taken by the board. May I have a roll call, please?
Canlis,
Here.
Gonzalez,
Here.
Nishihira,
Here.
Swen Mallory,
Here.
Csba.
Here. Agenda item number 5.2, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve agenda for tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Any comment, discussion? Roll call, please.
Canlis,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Nishihira,
Aye.
Swen Mallory,
Aye.
Csba.
Aye. Agenda item number 6.1, because of the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order, the district has provided the opportunity for community members to address the board via email at public comment at nhusd.k12.ca.us. The deadline to submit requests was today at 2 p.m. and one email was received. That comment was provided to the board ahead of this meeting. Are there any community members that wish to address the board on topics that are not on the agenda? Please raise your hands now. I do see 4 hands raised. 5 now. So let's see. I will call on everyone one at a time and I will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Speakers that go over 2 minutes will be muted. We will start with Samina Ishq. Go ahead, please.
A person has lowered their hand. I don't see them any longer.
Yes. Oh, no, it's up again. It was lower. I think maybe they're trying to
Okay.
get on. Let's give them time.
Yeah.
Samina?
Can you hear me now?
Sure, yes, please start. Thank you.
My today's comment and my question. My question today is about distance learning and for special ed in the next academic year, or what that would look like for those kids who are medically fragile. I also have a question about the class size in New Haven. I know that the class size is going to be increased. The same conversation was up for discussion 2 years back, if the board does remember. I had addressed it at that point to the then superintendent, as the class size was being suggested that they're going to increase it, and I'm worried about my child's progress as well as how he would do with an increased class size. So these are my two questions to the board, and I would like that to be addressed back in an email to me with an answer, so that I know what the board and what the district is thinking about going forward, given the COVID and the pandemic situation, as we don't know what it would look like in 2 months' time, and how a child who's medically fragile would fit into all this and what services would look like. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Gardner. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Gardner, and I'm actually speaking right now as an individual. And item not on the agenda is I want to tell you a brief story about one of my first students. At my first year here, he pulled me aside. He was a 19-year-old senior, and he said, Mr. Gardner, I don't want you to try to push me in college. I don't want you to give me extra classes. I want you to help me get a diploma. I've already got a job. My mom wants me to walk. And so I heard his goal and I helped him achieve it. And years later, ran into him and he thanked me for respecting his goals and helping him achieve them. And that's always informed my education as a resource teacher to help students work towards what they want to get, whether it's college or career. And in that lines, there's a organization out of Oakland called Cypress Mandela that specializes in pre-apprenticeship programs to help students get high-paying blue-collar jobs with training. They also recently opened an office here in Union City, and it's going to be one of my goals over the next couple of years to try to build a working relationship with their program and our high school. And so I figured that the board should know about it and would try to help it make it happen. Obviously, this is probably the first time you're hearing about it, but I will be presenting information as it goes by. And I'd like for in the future you to hear their own words about what they do so that we can help find options for students who college would not be a good choice or it's not the choice they want, but they can still have dignity and earn a good income and then also stay here in Union City, which is a very special city. That's all my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner, for your comments. The next in line is Donna Perry.
Ms. Perry, you're muted. Sorry.
All right, I'll start again. Good evening, President Csba, trustee members, and district management. Hello, my name is Donna Perry, and I'm a core teacher at Cesar Chavez Middle School, and I've been teaching there for 20 years. I'm here to tell you why smaller class sizes are so important. When students are in smaller class sizes, teachers can spend more time with each student teaching, building relationships, and building community in the classroom. Research shows that students in smaller class sizes perform better in all subjects and on assessments when compared to their peers in larger classes. In smaller classes, students tend to be as much as 1 to 2 years ahead in content knowledge, and they score higher on standardized assessments. For our at-risk students, as well as those who struggle with English literacy, smaller classes enhance academic performance. Class sizes also shape the quality of writing instruction at all levels, because smaller classes are essential for students to get sufficient feedback on multiple drafts. Over the years, I have taught reading intervention classes, as well as designated English language development core classes. Both of these programs focused on smaller class sizes. I found with both of these groups of students that classroom engagement and participation improved and usually led to improved grades also. I directly attribute this to smaller class sizes. There is nowhere to hide if you are one of 20 or 25. In a class of 35, students can
Time.
easily hide.
Time.
Is that my time? Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next in line is Ms. Maria Ramirez. Welcome.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I looked at the agenda and I was surprised because I listened to the last board meeting and I was like so encouraged by what Mike brought up in terms of looking at data for the Dakota community. And I let some of my friends know, I go, oh my God, they're going to look at the disparities. They're going to look at the data. And when I saw the agenda, I didn't see it on the agenda. And I really want the board leadership, all of you trustees, to please don't be afraid of tackling this. This is very important. It's, as someone who grew up in Dakota, my mother was born and raised in this town, I can tell you historically, even when we were the majority, the marginalization of our students has just been so systemic. So that I want you to know, we as a community in Dakota would so support you looking at the racial disparities and repairing the educational pipeline so it becomes one of promise for our kids. You got to stop. I mean, I know this is COVID and all of these things, but the racial disparities is also coming to a head. And I want you to have the courage to change the situation, because I don't want to die and know that the young generation is still not being served for the promise that they hold for our kids. So please lead our new superintendent to tackle it, because what'll come out of it will be positive and good for all of us.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Ramirez. Next in line is Ms. Kelly Thomas.
Good evening, President Csba, trustee members, and district management. My name is Kelly Thomas, and I'm a special education teacher at Cesar Chavez Middle School. I am here to tell you why it is time for the district's words to align with their actions so that students may thrive and not just survive. Just yesterday, I was informed that the students in the NICE program will be placed in my mild moderate classroom for next school year because the number of students in the program are low. The students in the NICE program are some of New Haven's most vulnerable students with high needs. Why would it be okay for children who are most vulnerable to be denied the program that works best for them? New Haven often speaks about equity and students' needs coming first. These actions do not, I repeat, do not reflect what New Haven says it is about. Students deserve to thrive, not just survive. For this to happen, the district needs to retain They're teachers. Now, in addition to having the stress of already using my scarce time to fight for a fair contract, now I have to advocate for my students to make sure they get what they deserve. Honestly, after hearing how one of the most vulnerable populations in the district is being treated, it really makes me consider finding another district to teach in. This would be a huge loss for New Haven. I have over 20 years experience of teaching special ed. I make lessons creatively and engaging. I have high standards and expectations for all of my students. I am committed to my students. I build relationships with their families, and the students, I advocate for them. I stand by them. Please know that the decisions that the district is making are impacting your students and teachers and makes us not to want to stay in this district. If the New Haven Unified
Time.
School District,
Time.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for your comments. Next in line is Mr. Gavin Smith. Welcome.
Good evening, President Csba, Board Trustees, Superintendent Thompson, District Managers, members of the community. I'm a parent in the district. I'm also a teacher in the district. I also have a child that has special needs, and this is Classified Appreciation Week. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the classified employees, office staff, the CSTs, which help keep campus safe. And even though a lot of the campuses feel like they've been closed this whole year, they've been going on. We also have maintenance that does a superb job, and we have paraprofessionals that work with students. We have classified employees that are working in pods with students right now in person. And then we also have food service workers that do a really important job to our students and their families. I'm probably leaving out somebody. I just want to say that they are very important to me as a teacher, especially the paras. And they are very important to our students and our families. So as we move forward to this new year and we go back in person, I hope we do everything we can to be supportive of each other, as we have been. I think we've been doing working well together this year under these tremendously difficult circumstances. And I want to thank Superintendent Thompson for his efforts in that leadership. And I hope that that type of leadership continues. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I think is the last speaker, Mr. Vince Furia. Go ahead, please. Welcome.
Now you can hear me. Well,
Yes.
Hello, New Haven School Board and everyone else in the audience. This is my first time in the digital platform. I've spoken in front of the school board many, many times. It's good to see all of you. I just wanted to ask the school board if they know that they are the policymakers for the New Haven Unified School District. And if they know that they are the ones who can set budget priorities for the New Haven Unified School District. And if they know that it's somewhat irresponsible to have a budget that does not have a plan to account for cost of living increases for its employees, that it does not have a plan to reduce class size. We are concerned with declining enrollment. That is always an issue with our district. High class sizes is definitely a contributor to declining enrollment. Continual contract issues and labor disputes is a reason for our declining enrollment. This year has been unprecedented. Teachers and other staff members have worked unprecedented numbers of hours learning new things. If the school board truly values the work that teachers and other certificated employees have done, the school board can direct its bargaining team to settle a fair contract with fair wage increases, with a plan for class size reduction that is meaningful, and to direct its budget chief financial officer and its district managers to write budgets that plan for salary increases, that plan for class size reduction. There are new members on the school board. Welcome to them and to the continuing school board members. I hope that you take the reins, that you understand you are the policy makers, you are the decision makers, you are the ones who can make a difference, not the other way around. It is not the district managers who make the decisions that you approve. It is you who direct the district managers to make the priorities for this district. I've enjoyed working for New Haven.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of your comments. We are on the next agenda item is 7.1, public comment, hearing of visitors on topics on agenda. Are there any community members that wish to address the board on topics that are on the agenda? Please raise your hands. I will call on everyone one at a time. I will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. Speakers that go over 2 minutes will be muted. I see 5 hands up. So I will, so there are more hands that are coming up. So we'll start with Miss Colleen Hazlitt. Start.
You're muted, Ms. Hazlitt. There we go. Thank you.
I'm here. I just want to commend you for finding that third girls basketball coach that is being listed as being paid on this agenda. But I do have to say that don't be surprised that some of us find it suspicious after the fact. Not too long ago, some of you were in the district at that time. A head coach for a girls team was paid 4%, while the exact same position was paid 5%, and the district did not correct it until after they found out they were being investigated by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Civil Rights. So to just let you know, there's a long history of that happening in this district. And it is why a number of us always find this somewhat suspicious. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next hand, I see Mr. Michael Gardner. Go ahead, please.
I'm talking about 9.1, the governor's May budget revision update for the 21-22 budget. And I know one of the things you'll be talking about is learning loss and how to best mitigate it. I obviously believe that class size will be a big part of it. And I think that making a huge increase for resource teachers named Michael Gardner would help a lot. But what I think is really the main priority is getting the budget done. If students start the next school year, that is going to impact them being able to gain the learning that was lost. If next year there's negotiations over the contract still, anything that we spend money on is going to end up being much less effective. Whereas if the contract is settled, then next year, whatever you choose to do, I think it should be class size. Whatever you choose to do to help gain the lost learning will be multiplied because teachers will only be focused on instruction and not on contract negotiation. So I urge you, when you're talking about the budget, to remember that if the contract is settled, however you help students gain lost learning from this last year, it will be multiplied if teachers are focused only on the classroom. And then also, of course, make sure the budget is in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Mr. Austin Bruckner. Go ahead, please.
Hi, good evening, Board President, trustees, and Superintendent. My name is Austin Bruckner, and it's my privilege to be here. I'm speaking on behalf of item 11.1. For the past 10 years, I've had the honor and privilege of being a part of a group called Castro Valley Pride. It's a group in Castro Valley that advocates for the advancement of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and questioning students, families, and individuals within our community. I'm here to thank your board for what I hope is a successful passage of a resolution similar to that other districts in the area have taken up. Castro Valley Pride this year, in conjunction with Livermore and Oakland Pride, has been working with local districts to encourage them to not only pass a Pride resolution, but to incorporate a flag raising. Why a flag raising during a summer break, you might ask? Because it's critically important, especially in a time when many students are trapped at home right now in what's often an unwelcoming environment. So I would encourage districts to really consider the important symbol that seeing a pride flag flying outside of their school sends to a student who right now may really need it. I also encourage you to take a look at the intersectionality that LGBT students and other students of color, for instance, face, kind of the unified struggle to develop some programs and services that truly address kind of the growing disparities and the needs between these different groups, specifically among our student athletes, to really examine the number of times that an LGBT student indicates that they're being bullied by a student athlete. And again, I will yield the rest of my time, but I encourage New Haven Unified School District to join Castro Valley, Hayward, and the Alameda County Office of Education, who just last week all passed resolutions. And I encourage you to follow Castro Valley and Hayward's lead in raising the rainbow flag. Thank you so much, and I appreciate what I hope is your support.
Thank you for your comments. Next in line is Mr. Greg Snelling. Welcome.
Good evening, board. My name is Greg Snelling, 24 years at Alvarado Elementary, current 4th grade teacher. I presume you can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. Okay. So I know Ms. Heldman is going to share a lot of good news from the May revised proposal from Governor Newsom. I just want to remind you of the good news from last time, that despite STRS going up, there'll be $1.8 million of relief to the general fund next year due to COVID relief funds called ESSER. That the $1 million in uninsurance costs is most likely not an ongoing cost. I'd wager each of you a lunch that will not be an ongoing cost once that unemployment relief fund is replenished. The bad news is that your 3-year budget projections, according to the district, that the budget requirements and demands of it cause you to consistently, historically project $0 3 years out. And that is the case for this year. 3 years ago, you projected you have $0 at this time. And what that does is it creates an antagonistic relationship between the school board, the district managers, and its employees. The really, really super good news is that your projected ending balance, unrestricted ending balance above the 3% required for economic uncertainties, above the 3% for routine restricted maintenance, and above the 7% self-imposed spending, reserve requirement, will be not 15.9 million like the second interim projected, but by the time the estimated actuals come out, it will be $19 million. And if a contract is not resolved before the unaudited actuals come due in September, we know that the historical variance from the estimated to unaudited actuals is 5%. In the last 2 years, it's been over 10% and 20%. So that unrestricted reserve could be anywhere from $20 to $24 million above and beyond any reserves you keep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next speaker in line is Mr. Joe Q. Angeles. Welcome.
Good evening, President Csba, Board of Trustees, Dr. Thompson, district staff, teachers, staff, and community members, parents, and students at home. I did want to address the board item 3.2, which of course is contract negotiations. I want to just again mention that we're coming to a close of a 1.5 years of incredible service in this new venture of virtual learning. And also on that same note, the fact that we all know now with this kind of service that we witnessed, that teachers are now truly understood the kind of work and service we provide. I think even the communities across the nation, as well as through the state, know what a teacher does Monday through Friday, after work hours, over the weekends, to make sure their students have the best environment. So with that in mind, with the whole complication of that service for a year and a half, it was very much uncomfortable for all of us, no doubt about that. And I say that because now we got to get to another place of this uncomfortability. As you know, like was mentioned, we are in a contract negotiation, and we're hoping that through our different collaborations in the past, that can really kind of come together to have a different narrative on the use of the financial budgeting for the district. And I say it's uncomfortable because the narrative that Greg Snelling just mentioned has always predicted the famous doom and gloom scenario, which has not come true on the year of our difficult strike. It did not come true. 10 years prior, it did not come true. So I'm hoping we can work together to change the narrative, how we look at that way to make sure the best environment for our students can come through in the best way possible. Like we mentioned, obviously, teachers' compensation for that service, we all know is incredibly unsurpassed. Workload and class size are definitely related. We know that the class size has been a conversation many years. I am thankful that the board has considered thinking about trying to do some kind of movement on class size. But I think we also need to come to a different kind of narrative on how we look at the financial picture of the district. Obviously, the district was never supposed to be like a savings account. They have so much money at the end of the year. As much as that sounds good, it was the money that's supposed to be used for students, student program, and those who serve those students. So I'm hoping we can kind of move to a different narrative in settling the contract, because there's no doubt by setting contract now before we leave this year will certainly be a tribute to our, our consideration committees the past 2 years after the strike to work collaboratively to have this done. So I appreciate your understanding and moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And next speaker, last one in line is Mr. Gavin Smith again. Thank you.
Good evening again. Again, I come as a parent. I also come as a teacher. My wife is also a teacher in the district. And I just want to, I'm speaking on items on the agenda 3.2 negotiation update with bargaining units, and also 9.1 the governors may revise. In the 20 years or so that I've been teaching, 20 plus years I've been teaching here in the district, it feels that we've been in constant bargaining. We have 3-year agreements, but regularly those agreements are not settled in a timely fashion. And so we end up just kind of continuing to bargain. That creates, it's a lot of wasted energy. It's a lot of, it creates a lot of antagonism, which I don't think that teachers or other staff want to feel antagonistic towards each other. But I do think that ends up happening. We should be working together. This pandemic has given us an opportunity to change the way we do things. We've worked really well under these difficult circumstances, and we need to continue to move forward working well together. I'm very hopeful with new board members and a new superintendent that we will be able to move past some of these obstacles that we have had in the past. We need to prioritize the class size. Students do not learn when they're stacked on top of each other. It should not take a pandemic to realize that 40 students are too many in a classroom. Students next year will be coming to us with learning loss, and we need to have an environment that supports learning. Students do not learn when they don't feel safe. And even though we are going to probably all be vaccinated when we return, there are still going to be people that are feeling unsafe. And so as we try to address the social emotional needs of our students, class size would make a tremendous difference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the comments from the community members. We are moving on to the next agenda item is 8, recognition, presentation, and or action. 8.1 is the review of student disciplinary expulsion process. Mr. Pisani will give us the presentation. This presentation will review. No, I'm not mute. So tonight's presentation will review the full expulsion process, starting with the recommendation made by the site, to the decision by the school board, to the readmission of a student from expulsion status. Go ahead, please start your presentation.
Good evening,
Mr.
President Chima, members of the board, Superintendent Thompson. Tonight, we'll be providing you with information related to the student expulsion process. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Marcus Lamb, the Director of Student Services.
Good evening, everybody. I would like to share. All right. So good evening, Board President Chima, Board Trustees, and Superintendent Thompson. Tonight, I will be reviewing the student expulsion process with you. Fortunately, this is not a process that we had to engage in this past school year. However, we do have students who were previously expelled and are on the path for readmission. And so tonight, I'm hoping that the timing of tonight's presentation will provide you some insight on the process and also prepare you for readmission decisions, which will be made on June 1st. So expulsion is the most severe disciplinary consequence that a district can impose on a student, and it can only be imposed by the school board. Our schools do a lot to provide support and interventions for students who make poor decisions and violate the education code. When students are recommended for expulsion, it means they violated the education code that mandates a recommendation, or this recommendation is the last resort in an attempt, last resort attempt at disciplinary action. When a student is expelled from school per ed code, they're not allowed to attend any school in our district or any other districts. We're still responsible for providing students with an academic option, and most students are referred to our Alameda County community schools. So there are 3 categories of education code violations that can result in a recommendation for expulsion. On the left are the first set of violations, which are the Education Code 48915C codes. And if a student violates these codes, it is a mandatory recommendation from the site, and the board is mandated to expel. Examples of these violations are students having firearms at schools, students brandishing knives at another person, selling controlled substances at school, committing or attempting sexual assault, or possession of explosives. So as you can tell, those are very severe infractions. There is a second a category of education code violations, which are the 48915As. And these are still severe, but not as severe as those in the far left column. And these require a school to make a recommendation for expulsion unless they feel that another means of correction is appropriate. In situations like this, schools, the schools need to also make a secondary finding, which means one of these two statements must apply: that other means of corrections are not feasible, or they've repeatedly failed to bring about proper conduct, or because due to the nature of the act, the presence of the student causes a continuing danger, danger to the physical safety or of the pupil or others at the school. And so examples of these types of violations would include students seriously injuring another student, possession of knives, explosives, or other dangerous objects, possession or use of substances except for a first offense of marijuana, robbery, extortion, assault or battery or threat of a school employee. And so, again, as I mentioned, unless the site determines otherwise, these are mandatory recommendations, and the board may expel based on the secondary findings. So in that situation, the board does have an option. And in the far right column, these are what we call our discretionary violations. And these are violations of Education Code 48900. And if a student violates these education codes, it does not necessarily mean an expulsion needs to be recommended. Oftentimes, other means of corrections are feasible, which include suspension or lesser consequences. However, if a school decides or feels that one of the two secondary findings applies, they can make a recommendation for expulsion. And generally, when this happens, it's because the school has been working with the student, they've been providing interventions, everything that the school has been trying has continued to not be effective, and the student continues, or the action is so severe that a recommendation is recommended by the school site. In these situations, it is an option for the school to make a recommendation, and it's also the option of the board to expel. So after a student commits an action that violates education code, the school needs to prior to making a recommendation, the school needs to investigate, and they do. They collect evidence, they collect witness statements, and they analyze the situation and assess for disciplinary actions. If they feel that an expulsion is a possibility, they will contact the family. They'll suspend the student, usually for 5 days because the action is that severe. And they would let the family know of what's happening with the situation. They would confer with me, the Director of Pupil Services, and we would review all the facts. We would review the secondary findings, and we would also discuss whether an expulsion is the only means of correction or if there are other things that can happen. And all these things happen within the first 2 days, for 1 to 2 school days after the situation. After it's determined that a recommendation for expulsion is appropriate, we do need to follow steps and procedures to honor a student's due process. And this is a flow chart that describes the expulsion process from start to finish, which includes a student's readmission back into the district from expulsion status. There's a link at the bottom that leads to our student parent handbook. On page 30, there is a similar flow chart with more details. But in the next few slides, I'm going to be walking us through this process. So the site has made their decision to make a recommendation for expulsion. The family is communicated about this recommendation, and a meeting called the Extension of Suspension meeting is scheduled to include myself, the family, and the school administration. We have 5 days we have 5 school days from the day of the suspension to hold this meeting. If a student has an IEP, before the extension of suspension meeting is held, there needs to be an IEP, and it's called a manifestation IEP. And this is an IEP that involves the student's IEP team, which is IEP team. And what they do is they review the student's IEP to ensure that it's been followed and that it is appropriate. In addition, the primary question that the team needs to address is, was the student's action a manifestation of their disability? Meaning, did the disability they have, aid in the decision-making of their action? If it's determined that the disability did play a factor in their action, no recommendation for expulsion would be made. Instead, the IEP team would work to develop supports and interventions to support the student. If the disability was not considered a factor in their actions, then the site can continue with their recommendation for an expulsion. A common example of a situation where a student has an IEP, yet a recommendation for expulsion may continue would be maybe a student would have an IEP for speech or articulation services. And the student commits an action of attempting to sell drugs at school. The team most likely would determine that the student's articulation did not affect the student's decision-making, thus we would proceed with a recommendation. At the extension of suspension meeting, as I mentioned before, this is a meeting between myself, the site administration, and the family. At this meeting, this is the time in which we would review all the facts of the situation as we know. We would explain how the student's actions violate education code, and we'd also explain the rationale for why a recommendation for expulsion is appropriate. We would review the student's rights, their due process, and also explain the requirements for readmission if the school board decides to expel the student. On this page here are links to samples of what is distributed and what is reviewed with the student. As part of the rehabilitation plan, we do require counseling hours and also community service hours in normal times. During COVID. The board has waived that. And so we also provide these resources of counseling and community service options in the community. At the end of the meeting, if the presence of the student at the school would continue to be a danger, or the presence of the student at the school would continue to be a threat of the instructional process, per education code, the district, we would go ahead and extend the student suspension until the resolution of the until we have a resolution to the recommendation for expulsion. One of the rights that a family or a student automatically has is to that of an expulsion hearing. At the extension of suspension meeting, we would present the family the overview and the facts of the case which lead to this recommendation. From there, the family has a choice. They can agree and agree with the situation with the recommendation and waive their right to a hearing, but automatically the family does have that right to the hearing. And the purpose of the hearing is it's a process to determine whether a student should be expelled. This hearing is similar to a court or a hearing situation in which the family and the district would take turns presenting their case, presenting evidence, and making their case for an expulsion or not of an expulsion. During this process, the family also has the right to legal representation. The family and the district, usually it's myself that would lead the hearing for the district. We would present to a 3 administrator panel of administrators who are not from this student's school, and we look to have a panel, an impartial panel in which the administrators have not had contact or worked with the student or the family in the past. They would hear the case and they would make their own independent recommendation to you, the board. And so you, the board, would receive both the initial recommendation for expulsion and also the recommendation from the panel, which includes all the evidence that's presented from the hearing. Once you receive that, then you have the opportunity in closed session at a board meeting, to make a decision. I have 3 boxes here. You technically have 4 different options. The first is you have the option to approve the expulsion, which means that the student cannot attend a New Haven school or another school in another California school district. You can approve an expulsion and also suspend the enforcement. This means that the student continues in a New Haven school on probationary status, and that this probationary status can be revoked if the student violates education code or other school rules or regulations. You as a board can also deny the recommendation, which means you've reviewed everything and you do not believe that the student should be recommended, And so the student automatically goes back to school and the recommendation is dropped. The final thing that you have the right to do is if the hearing was waived by the family, you have the right to not accept that waiver and order a hearing in which we would go have that expulsion hearing and return to you with the recommendation from that panel. So when a student is expelled, most students are enrolled in an Alameda County school, which the two schools that we generally refer to are Hayward Community School and Quest Academy. Quest Academy is an independent studies program. And they attend that school for the duration of their expulsion. While on expulsion, they are required to complete the board required conditions of their rehabilitation plan, which requires them to not have grades of D's or F's, maintain satisfactory attendance and not be truant, not get suspended or violate school rules, stay away from school sites New Haven or other districts. They need to complete counseling, which we generally require 20 hours of counseling, and completion of community service, which we generally require 20 hours. But as I mentioned before, during this COVID pandemic, the board waived the community service requirements. And so when the term of their expulsion nears an end, we present each student back to you, the board, for review of their progress and for you to make a decision on their readmission back into New Haven. Traditionally, the board has always required the completion of all criteria for readmission. During the expulsion period, we do maintain communication and continue to offer support to the families and student. I check in with the family to monitor progress. If families have not engaged in counseling or community service, we'll work with them to guide them in looking for services. I constantly check in with the student schools to monitor the academic and attendance progress. And if there are ways that we can continue to support the school and the family, we try to collaborate, because the mentality we as New Haven need to maintain is that even though these students are expelled, they're still our students and they will return to us. And we need to do what we can to maintain those relationships and to support a successful transition back from expulsion. So I'd like to thank the board for the presentation, for allowing me to present to you this evening. And I'd like to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lam, for your very comprehensive presentation. And thank you also for following the board's direction in the previous years to improve this process, to add more support services for our students and for our families. I appreciate that. So with that, is there any comment or questions from the board members? Please raise your hands now. I don't see any hands up, but I would like to know, in this environment, now we have the option of PLA. So one of the biggest decisions previously to expel a student was that if the student is a continuous danger to the students in the school, so that was the reason to expel them. So with the option of PLA, staying students at home, do you have any information that if we can keep that student still in the system instead of sending them to the Quest Academy or the Hayward School, community school, and how we can handle that? If you have any input at this time, you can share it now, or you can provide that information later on.
Technically, our Personalized Learning Academy is still a New Haven school. So per ed code, we would not be able to assign the student to that. The only way that a board would be able to say we want this to do that would be to suspend the enforcement. But the student would be on that probationary status. But I would have to also say that, we also need to think about what's best for the student, because the PLA approach is not necessarily for all students. And the Hayward community does allow, well, in normal times, in-person instruction,
Right.
and it's not technology-based.
Right. But Quest was, I think, once in a week they have to go there, but otherwise they would do their work from home, I believe, right? Quest Academy program?
Yes, Quest is very similar to our Dakota School for Independent Studies program.
Okay, thank you. So seeing, oh, I see there is one hand up from Trustee Nishira. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lamb. Very comprehensive. One question I have, and you might have covered this and I might have missed it. So apologies if I missed it. When the board can deny the recommendation, so for example, if staff recommends that we do that we expel a student, what criteria should we consider in the denial? I mean, obviously, if they are mandatory expulsions and or mandatory with other conditions, we don't have the option. But for the discretionary bucket, what is the criteria by which the board can or what are the things that the board should consider when either denying or accepting staff's recommendations?
You know, I would have to say the expulsions, a recommendation for expulsion is not something we take lightly. And so when we make the recommendation, we really, we're talking discretionary now. We really take a look at whether all the different things that a school site has tried to do in terms of working with the student, in terms of working with the family, really looking at the violation, the violation that the student committed, and also looking at possibly the past history of maybe multiple violations. And so I think taking a look at the big picture, you know, as I mentioned, this is the sort of the last resort type of discipline that can be applied. And so we would only bring a student to the board, you know, if we believe that the student has just, you know, as other secondary findings say, other means of corrections are not feasible or have continually failed to bring about proper conduct, or just the nature of the act, you know, causes the student to be a continuing danger on campus.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I do see a hand up. Dr. Thompson, go ahead, please.
Oh, Marcus actually got to it. Mr. Lamb got to it. The secondary findings, Trustee Nishihara, are the ones where you would be making an assessment on whether or not those two criteria, if a permissive expulsion came to you, the panel would be basically stating to you that the secondary findings, one or both, had been met. And I guess if you didn't feel that the panel did a sufficient job of vetting that would be a reason. But again, as you know, expulsions are something that the last thing in the world we want to do is exclude our kids from our schools. And and so we don't, I've never seen anything come through on since I've been here anyway, that we would, you know, that was taken lightly and wasn't warranted. In fact, I don't think we've had a permissive expulsion come through since I've been here. It's all been usually 48915 violation. Anyway, Marcus already covered that, but that's that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no more hands up. Next, it was information item only. So next agenda item is 9.1. It's also information. Governor's May budget revision. Update on 2021-2022 budget. Ms. Heldman.
Yes, good evening, President Csba, Superintendent Thompson, board members, and our community. So statutorily, the May revise needs to be produced or issued on May 14th or by May 14th, which it did, and that was on Friday last week. a day after this agenda item was packaged together. So I don't have a presentation to share. In fact, much of the information really started getting released, bits and pieces of information late Friday evening and yesterday. However, I could cover some of those highlights and share with the community what that looks like. I'm going to start by saying, there's a lot to be thankful for with regards to the May revision from the governor. The buzz last week in terms of updates and news is the 75 billion surplus at the state level, comparing the anticipated revenue with the actual revenues that came at the state level. And so that 75 billion supposedly surplus is driving a lot of what's being proposed for the May revision. And highlighting a few of those high-end topics, for example, your Proposition 98, which of course is the piece of legislation that determines what K-14 public education gets. Comparing the January and the May revision, there's an increase of nearly $8 billion. So as I said, there is a lot to be thankful for. We're hoping to see some of that additional money in terms of how it comes down to us. And one of them that we've heard as an example is the COLA. That's another big news that we heard. Compared to what we heard as of the January proposal. And last week, Friday, it's projected to be over 5%. Now, that is fantastic news for us. I realize this is still a projection, but just for context, in a declining enrollment like us, we need a very minimum of 2% COLA just to break even. And we have been declining for at least the last decade, and we haven't been cutting the corresponding amount for that decline. So if we need a bare minimum of 2% COLA just to break even with regards to our loss in revenue, then a 5% COLA is fantastic news for us, right? So that's one of the things that I wanted to share, how some of that Prop 98 will be coming down the pike for us. Now, that COLA of over 5% projection will be applicable to the funding mechanism that we use, which is the LCFF. Not all the other programs receive the same level of COLA. For example, special ed is not getting the same level of COLA. Special ed is getting a reduced COLA. And other programs like child nutrition, they're not getting that same level of 5% COLA. So all of these will be put together. Like I said, we didn't get all the information in time for this update. Now, in addition to those big ticket things that actually affect our operating budget, there's a whole laundry list of other proposals from the governor. And again, keeping in mind that the surplus that apparently the state has is what's going to drive all of these. Now, there are of these proposals that actually predates Governor Newsom that we've been hearing for the last couple of years, even under Governor Brown. As an example is the universal TK. So that is coming back as a proposal. Educator preparation, that is coming back as a proposal. A lot of these, we've heard some of them before, even before Governor Brown. So let's see what pans out if any of these programs come to fruition. Now, what's clearly not in the May revision is any additional help to buy down the pension benefits, which is CalSTRS and CalPERS. We're not seeing any of that in the proposed May revise. And there's also no one-time discretionary funding. Now, when I talked about the different proposals, we're talking about the deferrals. He wants to buy down some of the deferrals, some community programs, some broadband. He wants to create a child savings account. So there's a lot of things that are out there in that proposal, but there's not a whole lot of information that we could share at this point in terms of what it looks like and how they impact districts like us. And a lot of that will be fleshed out. We should be seeing a lot of the trailer bills on these things. I think of trailer bills like, if you think of a board policy and an administrative regulation, the administrative regulation actually provides more detail in terms of how that would be implemented. So we're going to be watching this, and as we get information, we would be crunching numbers to see what it means to all of us. Let's see, what else did I miss? One last thing. We do have our Budget and Finance Committee meeting. It's actually scheduled for tomorrow. So there's a few days difference that we will be presenting some of the numbers that we know at this point that we didn't know on Friday. And that would be presented to the Budget and Finance Committee tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So I'm announcing it here. If there's anyone in the community who's interested in joining, that is a Zoom event. And the Zoom link will be posted on our website tomorrow, I believe. It's usually posted by noon. So unfortunately, that's all that I can share, given what we knew at the time that we were packaging this, this board agenda together. So more to come, stay tuned. And I can answer any questions if there are any at this point. Thank you.
Ms. Heldman, thank you for announcing the meeting for tomorrow. Can you also announce the time for tomorrow's budget? And
it's at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
3 p.m.
Yes, and the Zoom link will be posted on the website that we curate for the Budget Finance Committee.
Thank you. I do see a hand up from Trustee Nishihira. Go ahead, please.
Sure. So thank you for that presentation. Question that I have is, I've been doing some reading on the new budget revise as well, and it seems like one of the big priorities is around broadband. And a question that I have is, at the beginning of the pandemic, we did an assessment based off of technology access and to figure out, how all of our students were doing. Our department, our IT department did a fantastic push to ensure that everybody had what they needed. In fact, we have, we got T-Mobile hotspots so I guess the real question is, it appears that statewide broadband coverage is still an issue. Question that I have is are we still are we in a good spot right now with regard to our students? Our broadband, has our broadband coverage gotten better, gotten worse? Are the students that are being served with the T-Mobile hotspots, are we noticing any degradation in improvement or engagement? And if this is not the right time to have this conversation, it's fine. But I did know that statewide, this is still a really big issue. I just want to know if it's still if it's an issue at New Haven.
We might have to return some information to you. I do know that at some point, one of the metrics for that is how many families were requesting hotspots. So that would be one of the metrics, and we may have to get that data if there's any updated data and bring it back to the board, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
With regards to the broadband, just a note of information, when this particular item came back or came up for the first time in terms of a budget proposal at the state level, it was actually based on the unduplicated pupil count of an agency in order to be eligible. And if the agency is in a rural area. So when this came back the first time around, New Haven would not even be eligible for it. So waiting for trailer bills on what the practical, the terms and the what it looks like on the ground on this particular one. Now that it's coming back, we will find out. But it's no different. Like I said earlier, sometimes they come back and they keep coming back a few times before they actually are implemented. Universal TK, I use an example. When LCFF came the first time around under Governor Brown, it was not LCFF. It was called weighted student formula. It didn't pass the first time he floated it. He tried it again, and that's why we have LCFF. So we'll know more in terms of what that broadband initiative would look like, and we will share that with the board and the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no further comment, we are moving to the next agenda item is 9.2, California State Employees Association, CSEA, 2020 to 2021 Collective Bargaining Agreement Sunshine Proposal. Mr. McNamara.
Hello, President Csba, Superintendent Thompson, and members of the board. What this is it's an important step in the process for unions. Before we start bargaining, they have the sunshine. We had agreed with CSEA back, a year ago now, to really just focus on compensation. But because of the pandemic, we really haven't had a chance to even discuss it. We really are usually informed with CSEA bargaining, informed by the NHTA bargaining, because usually they're happening simultaneously. We did a very deep dive with CSEA's contract, the last round of bargaining. And so they really didn't have a lot of articles they wanted to look at. But in order to be eligible for any compensation, this is a step in the process. And so Robin, the president of CSEA, and I discussed putting this on a sunshine so that in the event we settle with NHTA, then the next step would be for me to meet with CSEA, go over a financial proposal with them, and then bring it to you. I'll take any questions you might have about this process.
Yeah, let me see if I don't see any hands up. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next agenda item is 9.3 item from the board and the superintendent. I would like to start it with Superintendent Dr. Thompson first.
Sure, thank you. As one of the speakers, I think it was Mr. Smith pointed out, this is Classified Employees Appreciation Week, and all of our employees, teachers, administrators, classified employees have done just an amazing amount of work during the pandemic. But our classified employees were the only employees that were, as a unit, had people here straight through the pandemic serving kids and families every day. And that from the beginning of it straight on through. And I mean, really, it was pretty amazing, especially in the throes of the pandemic when things were really bad, seeing our cafeteria workers out there serving food to families. Later on, our maintenance and operations crew, just keeping our sites and using this, not just sitting back, but using this as an opportunity to take our schools up a notch. And then also the first employees leading students back on campus way back in November were classified employees working with small groups of students on campus in classrooms and moving them forward. So thank you, classified employees. We really appreciate everything you do. Moving forward, summer, here's an update on summer school. We announcements I think have gone out or are going out this week to notify people. We have almost, I think it's 2,800 students that are enrolled in our programs out of 10,000 students, which is a lot, and it's pretty exciting to see. Our high school program alone has about 1,100 kids. We're operating 3 sites. I think we are going to succeed in being able to offer everybody who applied for a spot by the deadline an opportunity for summer school. So we're not, at least as of this afternoon, Mr. Pisani, correct me if I'm wrong, but as of this afternoon, it appears we're going to be able to offer every student a spot. Those that applied later or showed interest later, if we can't get them into one of our in-person programs, we are offering an online program for those parents and students who didn't want to come back in person but wanted something, and we're able to get them in there and slide them into other spots if spaces become available. So that's pretty exciting as well. A lot of work and a lot of time going into it. The administrative team that's been working on it and the support staff have really been working hard. So let's see. Again, I mentioned this at the last board meeting, but we're excited about our Facebook Live event next Friday. That's not the one coming up, but the one after that, the day after school's out, where we'll have some of our successful graduates profiled, and I'm looking forward to that. I think we've got our list settled, and those students are being invited, and that should be fun. Let's see, and finally, at our next board meeting, you'll get a district update on our goals prior to showing you our LCAP for the next 3 years, the budget, lots of different things. And I know there's been interest in some of the equity work that we're doing, both with our staff and with our students. One of the speakers tonight mentioned the Dakota data that Trustee Gonzalez requested, and we'll at that board meeting we'll package up and share with you what we've done, what we're in the process of doing, and what we're going to be moving forward with it. That piece, the Dakota piece, for example, is one piece of a bigger puzzle, an equity puzzle that we are and plan that we're working on. So we're excited to share that with you at our next board meeting and celebrate some of our accomplishments in the last year and year 1 of our strategic plan, and share with you what work is coming up. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I see hand up from Trustee Nishira. Go ahead, Trustee Nishira, please.
Thank you, Madam President. So first, I wanted to thank Member Gonzalez and also community member Maria Ramirez for keeping the torch lit. Thank you, Member Gonzalez, for bringing it up to our attention. It's definitely work that is incredibly important, long overdue, and will certainly get all of my support for sure. So thank you for that. Second one, I wanted to just a very quick little story. Back in 2015, or I think it's 2016, I served for a short time as a substitute teacher here in New Haven. And there was one day where I was assigned to a kindergarten class. And there were a couple students there. There was actually one student there who was identified to me as a student who likes to bite other students. And so I was petrified. And so I spent a lot of my time, instructional time, just trying to make sure that I keep an eye on the student, and also at the same time trying to engage the students in their work. And I was a little bit of a mess. I was, but luckily I glanced over to the back of the room, and I had two paras, and the paras there, they gave me kind of the confidence, and they looked at me and they said, you know what, you got it. And they basically made that classroom really run for me. And so, whether it be that I work with the paras there, or work with the secretaries at the front office, or the custodial staff, you guys make the sites run. You guys are the lifeblood of our operation. And I just wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart of all the work that you guys do. Thank you, CSA. Thank you for all that you do. Keep it up. We love what you do. So with that, I'll yield the remainder of my time. I appreciate the time to address the board.
Thank you. Next is the trustee Melissa Mallory. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I also would like to recognize, classified staff appreciation. I think that, they've done such a great job, especially over the last year, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, just holding down the ship, making sure things run. We still needed custodial staff and maintenance staff and administrative staff and all sorts of staff on board. And they, were the first to help with our learning pods and so forth. So, without you all, we really couldn't run this district. And as someone who's worked most of my life as an administrative professional, I want to give a special recognition to our administrative professionals. You really make things run, and we appreciate you. And I also do want to recognize Trustee Gonzalez for bringing up the Dakota information. I think it's something very important that we'll be reviewing hopefully soon. And that's it.
Thank you. Next is Trustee Linda Carlos.
Thank you. I too would like to echo what my colleagues have shared regarding how important the support of our classifieds to our students and the teachers. So we appreciate you. Thank you so much for what you do. And you really, really make our life, staff and students, a lot better because you're there. I'm also looking forward to our in-person promotions and graduation, which are coming up in the next few weeks. It is just so exciting to know that we will finally see real people and we see our students graduating or being promoted. This is what we're here for. We want to see our students successful and the results of all the work we put together all these years. And again, also, I'd like to echo and thank Trustee Gonzalez for the request that he has put regarding the demographic for the Dakota area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Trustee Michael Gonzalez, your turn.
All right. Well, thank you for all the recognition there. Appreciate it. I'm going to talk later on when it comes to the part of the agenda where board requesting staff. I'll talk about some of the specifics of the data collection on that later on. But what I do want to recognize is classified staff appreciation, and I absolutely appreciate them. When the pandemic hit and I'm at a brand new school, they allowed teachers that wanted to go back and teach from their classroom virtually. I did so, and the only ones that befriended me and showed me the ropes was the classified staff. So I want to, my best friends, you know, I don't know the other teachers, but I do know my classified staff. So like always, appreciate you. I also want to recognize mental health awareness. I know these are really stressful times, and the irony of having mental health awareness with testing. Some of us are starting testing, like me. I'm starting testing at my school and super stressful. And some of us are finishing with the state testing. So my heart goes out to the families, the parents, the students that have to do state testing, the teachers, of course, paraprofessionals, principals from the superintendent all the way down. My heart goes out to you. It is extremely stressful, difficult, in a pandemic, virtual. So thank you for hanging in there. I also want to recognize, and I like to just model. Time's up. All right.
No. You can go ahead.
I just want to recognize and just model for the rest of my colleagues here, just land acknowledgement. At the beginning of board meetings, I know across the nation and in so many meetings, the majority of my meetings I attend is just land recognition. It could be 20 seconds, it could be long, it could be short, but I just want to read this real quick. We want to open this meeting by acknowledging with respect that the land we are on today is the traditional ancestral homelands of the Ohlone Chochenyo First People. We recognize and thank the Ohlone peoples as the original stewards of this land. I would like to acknowledge the traditional and ancestral territory of the Ohlone First Nations on which we are conducting this meeting today. I think it's important to acknowledge the land because growing up here, I never heard the traditional names of our land. Indigenous people were talked about in the past tense, and all the struggles they faced were in the past tense as well. It is easy to deny Indigenous people their rights if we historicize their struggles and simply pretend they don't exist. I would like to take this opportunity to commit myself and invite others to the struggle against the systems of oppression that have dispossessed Indigenous people of their lands and denied their rights to self-determination, work that is essential to human rights work across the world. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So for me, I would also like to echo my fellow board members' appreciation week for the classified employees. And I have mentioned it before that I started as a paraprofessional in our district in 1992. And coming from a country being an immigrant, I was in totally shock. Sometimes I was assigned into the special ed classes. And I can relate to the member Nishira's experience that how it was very, very different for me. So, but I really appreciate the work all of our employees, especially CSEA, who support our students and our school system. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next agenda item is 10.1, a report from the Budget and Finance Committee. I can, Trustee Canlis. Actually, I used to be on this committee, so I was thinking maybe I need to do updates. So no, I'm not there now. Trustee Canlis or Trustee Gonzalez, you have anything to?
Would you like to? Trustee Gonzalez?
Well, just
It's a bad connection, bad connection.
We have a meeting tomorrow.
So we have nothing to report at this time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next is agenda item 10.2, report from the Communication and Advocacy Committee.
Member Mallory, would you like to give the update?
Sure, I'll go ahead, and if you have anything to add, please feel free. We met with Spark. It was our initial meeting, and we went over a proposed timeline of the project. And I don't know if you all saw, but the school district posted some of the artwork that students submitted. So we did have a call for student art submissions to inspire the logo that we will eventually have. And so, you know, they're using these more as like a vision board to inform them of our values and what our students think about our district. And so there were some really great submissions. So I'm hoping, I think Dr. Thompson has the link to all of the artwork, and I'm hoping he will send it to the entire board so we can all look at it and appreciate the talent of our students. Some of them looked very professional. And so we went over that, and we talked about, you know, what we want to see in a logo, and, you know, what kind of options we want to have. And I think, well, that's all I have. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think that you covered all of it. We talked about kind of providing direction. They asked us a bunch of questions for orientation. I think that you covered everything. There's nothing that I can add.
Some of the pictures are posted on the district Facebook. So we saw some of the pictures. They're wonderful pictures. So thank you, students and committee.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for your report. And agenda item number 10.3, other committee reports. So let's see, I do see a hand up from Trustee Linda Canlis and Trustee Leslie. I don't know who was first. I'm going to start with Trustee Nishira.
Okay, so I've got two, I'll be quick. That's the New Haven Schools Foundation. Scholarship Luncheon is tomorrow. I'll be there. Also presenting the Community Spirit Award, or the Community Service Award. So that's for New Haven Schools Foundation. Second one is for the CSBA Delegate Assembly. I attended that over the weekend, and it was really, really good to see. I'm not going to go over all of the content, obviously, you know, but there are a couple of highlights. There were some legislative and legal updates that they gave. There was I got kind of a little bit of a preview of Annette's information from the budget office. But there was actually a couple things that I thought I wanted to bring back to this board, and this is specific to Member Gonzalez, who was talking about you know, how the policy recommendations are actually generated and actually kind of put on a slate and distributed to districts. There is actually a delegate body called the Policy Framework that the policy platform work that and I'll find it and I'll forward it to you when I find it, but that kind of gives a framework for how policy decisions or recommendations are actually created and packaged and sent out to school districts. That is something that as you possibly get more involved in CSBA, if that's something that you're interested in, perhaps you could actually get on the policy framework delegate assembly, so that maybe you can actually help shape the recommendations that come down. I hadn't known that before. Before I was the same as you, and it was you know, these policy recommendations come down, you take a look at them, you have some questions, you have some dialogue about it, but by and large they are recommendations based on new law, based on kind of a changing a changing educational landscape. But it's really interesting to find out the inner workings for how those recommendations are actually put together. So that was a part that was really interesting to me. Happy to talk about it in another governance session, or as we start to talk a little bit more about the policy subcommittee here at New Haven. But that was just a piece of information that I thought I'd love to share with the rest of the board. There's a few other things, but I'm sure that you can just get the quarterly update from CSBA and you'll be able to read all about it. But that I just wanted to take some time to call that out. That's all I have.
Thank you, Member Nishira, for your comments and information. All of the information you were talking about, actually, most of it is available on CSB's website. Mm-hmm. So anybody can go there and take a look. Thank you. So next, Member Canlis.
Yes, I would like to thank Member Nishihara again for accepting the appointment for the delegates for CSBA, because there's a lot of information that a lot of us don't read on the website that is there, because for some reason it's harder to go there than listening to someone who is a member of the team and actually was there to listen and deliver it to us. So thank you for doing that. It gives you a different perspective when you attend those meetings. I'd like to also share that this Thursday, Csba meeting at 6 p.m. on the governor's May revise. So if you want more on the governor's budget and have more questions, we have CSBA presenting as well on Thursday at 6. And you should all have a Zoom invitation from Penny Peck from San Leandro. Thank you. Hope to see you there.
Thank you. Any other update from other board members? Member Gonzalez, I think you are on SELPA committee. Do you have anything to add?
Next month we'll have their SELPA meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Trustee Melissa Mallory, do you have anything to add? No. So one thing I forgot in the last meeting was when we had the joint meeting with the city council, that our school district, we are working on the land swap projects. So I would like to, in the future, maybe in the next meeting, like to have an update about the progress of that land. So because it has been going on for some time. So how that project is moving forward. Thank you. And that's it for me. From the Mission Valley ROP, Mission Valley Regional Occupational Center, they are having their year-end Student of the Year Award ceremony this Thursday as well. But because we have so many ceremonies or celebrations are coming up, so it will be difficult for me to join them, but it's good that they will be doing it virtually. Next is action items 11.1, approval of resolution number 045-2021 in support of Pride Month, June 2021. So may I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution number 045-2021 in support of Pride Month, June 2021.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second. So if there is any comment, discussion, Linda, you have your hand up. Are you?
Oh, I'm sorry. That's from the
previous. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So we would like to read this resolution, and I would like to request Trustee Melissa Mallory to read the resolution. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay. Resolution number 045-2021 in support of Pride Month, June 2021. Whereas on June 27th, 1969, the New York City Police Department raided the Stonewall Inn, a bar that was frequented by members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, queer and questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirit, and asexual community, also known as LGBTQIP2SA. And whereas Marsha P. Johnson, a Black transgender woman, was an instrumental leader in the Stonewall Inn uprising, and we honor her contribution to the LGBTQIA+ rights movement. And we must also honor the intersectionality of LGBTQIA+ persons of color who still face heightened discrimination to this day. And whereas we acknowledge that Pride Month intersects with the Black liberation celebration known as Juneteenth, and that it is important to remember that Pride started as a defense of Black queer people 104 years after Juneteenth. And whereas the Stonewall riots marked the beginning of the liberation movement that transformed the oppression of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirit, and asexual people into calls of pride and action. And whereas the resistance led to the LGBTQIP2SA movement in America and Pride Month, where we commemorate the events of June 1969 and commit to achieving equal justice under the law for all LGBTQIA+ Americans. And whereas all children and youth should be able to attend school in a safe and inclusive environment free from discrimination, and civil rights laws contribute to such environments. And whereas the lack of awareness and understanding of issues facing the LGBTQIA+ children and youth has contributed to higher rates of school dropout, academic failure, and school disengagement. And whereas education regarding LGBTQIA+ issues increases understanding and cultivates respect for LGBTQIA+ children and youth. And whereas harassment and bullying policies that specifically mention sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression are associated with students feeling more safe, lower levels of bullying, decreased incidents of harassment related to sexual orientation, increased teacher and staff interventions, and a greater reporting of incidents. And whereas the rainbow flag, also known as the LGBTQIA+ pride flag, serves as a symbol of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer and questioning, intersex, pansexual, two-spirit, and asexual pride, and the LGBTQIA+ social movement. And whereas flying the rainbow flag throughout the month of June further symbolizes the district's celebration of diversity and support for the LGBTQIA+ community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the New Haven Unified School District recognizes the month of June 2021 as LGBTQIP2SA Pride Month to inspire equity, create alliances, celebrate diversity, and establish a safe environment in our schools and community. And therefore, be it also resolved that the New Haven Unified School District shall raise the rainbow pride flag over each school site and district location during the month of June in honor and recognition of LGBTQIP2SA Pride Month. Passed and adopted by the Governing Board of Education of the New Haven Unified School District, County of Alameda, this 18th day of May 2021 by the following vote.
Thank you, Trustee Mallory, for bringing this resolution. And thank you, fellow board members, for supporting it. Thank you for reading it today. I don't see any, I do see one hand up from Trustee Gonzalez. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to commend Trustee Schwinn Mallory for bringing this forward. This is going to be a huge deal for our students. For our district to take a stand like this, this is huge. It speaks volumes. I just want to commend you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Amlis.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye.
Schwinn Mallory.
Aye.
Chima.
Aye. Agenda item number 11.2, resolution number 046-2021, deduction of classified staff.
So moved.
I was going to ask, may I have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 11.2? It has been moved, so I need to have a second.
Second.
So any comment, question, or seeing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Canlis.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Nishihira.
Aye.
Schwinn Mallory.
Aye.
Chima.
Aye. Moving on to agenda item number 12, consent agenda items. Are there any items that trustees would like to be pulled for questions or separate vote? Seeing none, may I have a motion and a second to approve consent agenda item number 12.1 through 12.15?
So moved.
Seconded.
Roll call, please.
Canlis,
Aye.
Gonzalez,
Aye.
Nishihira,
Aye.
Swen Mallory,
Aye.
Chima.
Aye. Agenda item number 13, there is nothing to be discussed. And agenda item number 14, governance review, assessment of governance procedures and protocols. Anybody would like to have any comment or anything? So seeing none. Next agenda. Oh, okay. Trustee Linda, you're on 14.
Yeah, I just want to say you did a good job.
Oh, thank you.
We were always quick to point out when we're not doing well, but we don't always point out when we're doing well. So did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. And thank you for your commendation. Agenda item number 15, board members' requests. I see one hand up from trustee Michael Gonzalez. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to speak on bring some context to the Dakota community data collection. So I'd just like to preface this by saying, I know we're in a pandemic. I know there's district priorities. I know we have a lot going on and you want to pull the staff. Staff is spread thin right now. And I absolutely agree with that. And so I'm not asking us to reinvent the wheel. We already do this with our single school plans. Every school has to do this, has to collect this data. So I'm trying to stay within those parameters of that kind of data. So the single school, it's the annual process. They develop, they review, they update their plan. It's a comprehensive review of that data. LPAC, this is something we do. This is the law. Every district is doing this. And so I want to put together from the last 10 years, Dakota community, what is it? It is from Dakota all the way to Whipple within there. It is number streets. It is letter streets. It goes from Mission Boulevard all the way to, that would be Cyril School. And so that's where it is. So if we stay within those boundaries, we look within the last 10 years. I also want to preface this that in my district that I teach in, we do ABAR training, which is anti-bias, anti-racist training. We bring culturally relevant. We have these courageous conversations. And so why look at that data? So I just want to take the fear out of looking at that data. This is not about lawsuits. It's not trying to, I got you. It's not trying to pull out individuals past leadership, but rather to validate those, like tonight we heard from a community member, and that's some righteous anger. There's people in our community that feel that way. I can attest to my family members, close friends that are having these experiences. And it's all about hearing, it's about healing, it's about empathizing with that community and hearing them out. Okay, an injury to one in our community is an injury to all. And so gentrification is being ramped up right now, and the community's feeling they're being pushed out, and they might be gone. They might be gone. Before that happens, we need to know the historical value of Dakota community. You know, great things happen in Dakota despite the negative connotations associated with. We have doctors, lawyers, real leaders, teachers, principals, university professors, our own mayor. Okay, there's so much more that folks need to know about it before even Union City was just by itself, Dakota. My grandfather, a bracero from Michoacan, arrived. He bought a brand new house, 9th and H. It's a thriving community. My grandfather didn't learn English for 60 years, lived there, thrived there. It has a history of huge bilingual community. Yeah, I'm halfway through, I'm sorry. The other part is, so one of our most vulnerable communities have felt this way. This is their feeling. These are their words. They're feeling disenfranchised. They're feeling oppressed. The sentiment is that New Haven Unified School District is a prison or schools to prison pipeline for them. There's a feeling that there's a double standard practice where it's no tolerance for the Dakota community, and all the other kids, there's a second chance. For decades, BIPOC, that is Black and Brown, Indigenous, people of color, Dakota community have experienced significant barriers and anti-Dakota racism structures in New Haven Unified District, and have years through school closures. The Dakota and gentrification has spurred the over-criminalization of BIPOC youth, the failure to adequately resource schools serving Dakota families. The Dakota community in New Haven Unified School District have faced the greatest obstacles and have been granted inadequate resources to allow them to thrive. My intent is to disrupt the complacency of those who, for too long, have been comfortable with not having these conversations about the impact of racism in our district. And before New Haven Unified, again, this is not about going after New Haven Unified. Before New Haven Unified, there was Washington High School. Our students would go to Washington High School, and there they similar experiences and stories that they knew we were the Dakota kids, because this is Sammy, past Sammy Ramirez. He was on his way to his class reunion. They knew we were the Dakota kids because we were the Latino kids, and they hated us. They were so happy when Logan was created and they didn't have to deal with us anymore. So that's one of the many stories out there, and I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Michael Gonzalez, for your courage to have this conversation and bringing it forth. I know you have requested to bring it on the agenda item, and me and Dr. Thompson, we discussed about how to have this conversation. The honest conversation we had, so I did not know that how much work will it involve. So we decided to bring it here so that Dr. Thompson will prepare something to respond to this request. And then, I mean, there is nothing to stop this work. We are all very, personally, I can talk for myself that we need to address any inequities we have in our system. So I would like to, I know there are two hands up from Trustee Melissa Shanwell. Maybe you can go ahead first and then Dr. Thompson.
Yes, I wanted to speak in support of Trustee Gonzalez's great information that he gave and spoke for the Dakota community. I live just down the street from your grandfather's house on H and 4th. So I know how great the Dakota community is. And you're right, the Dakota community was the core community which created Union City. And it's a wonderful and great community. And there's a lot of history here. There's a lot of pride here. But the one thing is that people, they do not trust the institutions in our city. They don't trust New Haven, the district. They feel that their voices are not heard. And they feel that, you know, they anytime I say, oh, we should speak up, we should say something, what the response has always been, nobody listens. So I really want to change that. I really want to prove to the people of Dakota that we care, that we hear their voice, and that we listen. And so, yeah, I look forward to seeing the data. You can already see it. This elementary schools that are here are lower performing than the other elementary schools. And often we see that programs that enrich the students are piloted at schools on the west side of town, not on the east side of town. So it's, you know, just anecdotal evidence like that, you know, points to there being a discrepancy.
Thank you. Thank you. Trustee Melissa Sean Mallory. I can just tell you that our first home was, we still own that property on Syracuse Avenue. It was in the Kuto district. It was in 1996. And my sons, they attended Sarosa Elementary, Sirisha Middle School, and of course, James Logan High School. So I have heard similar stories. And when some people, they just told us, oh, you know, why did you buy the house here? But we did not find, I mean, it's a great community. So I always tell them, my heart is still there, my body is on this side because of the family situation we are in. So, but we would love to have this work done. I mean, if there is any actual discrepancies or if there, I mean, what kind of solutions we can find. Thank you so much for being in the educational field. You have suggested already where we can extract the data. So I would like to call upon Dr. Thompson to share what he has to recommend.
Yeah, first